Okay, here it is, video number 6. Eventually I'm going to run out of fingers if I keep going down the rabbit hole. So hopefully you're watching this video after watching video number 5, and you're watching them all in sequence because you might have difficulty understanding if you don't follow along in sequence. And you'll appreciate that if you have been following along in the right sequence of videos, and you'll appreciate it even more if you did go and watch those videos that I invited you to watch. And so the pieces of the puzzle should be coming together now. The man of lawlessness has been revealed. You understand what the covenant with death really is and why it proves the governing body really are the rulers of God's people, the people in Jesus Christ's kingdom. So in the last video, I invited you to ask questions. Tell me what it is that's holding you back. And I went to check today, and I didn't see any questions. I didn't see anyone telling me, well, hold on, I'm not going to do this until I understand this. So I'm going to have to make some assumptions about what it might be that's holding everyone back, the entire ex-Jehovah's Witness community, because you're not asking me, and maybe you're afraid to ask. But surely after watching the last 5 videos, where you are indeed learning what I'm certain are new things, there should be questions. So maybe you're still contemplating, you're thinking about all these things and they're just too new, too shocking. Your bones have been rattled and you're not sure what to ask yet. And that's okay. But on the other hand, maybe you're just afraid to ask a question in the comments because maybe you're afraid that I might answer it. That might be scary too. Yeah, I understand. I can completely appreciate some of the reasons why you might be a little bit shy in regards to asking some questions. So I'm going to have to make some assumptions. What could it be that's in the way of the ex-Jehovah's Witness community that's not helping them to see that they are indeed the people the Bible talked about, the people during the time of the end who would be separated, and they'd be the wheat. But okay, if you are the wheat, then what should you do? I've spent some time explaining that, and hopefully it did rattle your bones and you realize that, yeah, it's you. You are the Spirit of Jesus Christ's mouth. And one of the things I've been trying to help you understand is who the enemy really is. Because if you're going to pay these things forward, you have to understand what you're up against. You are indeed up against an enemy, and those enemies are the same enemies that Jehovah himself and Jesus Christ has. You know where the adversary is, and not only where, but who the adversary is, the enemies. And so in the book of Revelation, it talked about a war. So who is God warring against, and where are his enemies? You should know the answer by now. And yeah, it's a little bit intimidating to think that now, if you observe God's commandment, you're going to war. But it's really is a great war, and you already know who will win. So if there's something holding you back, something you still don't understand, then ask a question. I'm going to assume then that my audience might still be having difficulty with the difference between Jesus Christ's kingdom and God's kingdom. And if I do that, then perhaps you'll start to see God's kingdom, and that all things really are new. If you start to see God's kingdom, then aren't you being born again? And if you're being born again, doesn't that mean that before that can happen, you must have died? Because you can't be born again unless at first you were killed. And I've already shown you in John chapter 16 that Jesus Christ said that they'll kill you. But was it a literal death? How can you be born again if you suffered through a literal death? And that's a question that Nicodemus asked Jesus Christ. How can a man pass through the womb of a woman once again? So, yeah, you've been killed. And in fact, if you watch thousands of Jehovah's or ex-Jehovah's Witness testimonies that can be found on YouTube now, almost all of those testimonies, people speak about the people in the kingdom hall that they've left behind in their own families, treating them as if they were dead. So I'm going to tell you that yes, you have been killed. But it wasn't a literal death. It's your character that has been killed. You are suffering through a character assassination. There's some modern terminology to describe exactly what's happening to you in the ex-Jehovah's Witness community, but it's not just you. Look around. There's hundreds of thousands of others suffering through the same death. So you can't be born again unless you suffer through that death. Right? And in Isaiah chapter 66, it said that we go through labor pains, and that labor pains would be required in order for a giving birth to happen. So let me ask you this question. Has the entire ex-Jehovah's Witness community suffered through some pains and grief? Certainly being separated from your own family and shunned and being treated as if you were dead, as if you were the cursed one from the Christ, then that's painful. That's very painful. But now, are you undergoing a new birth? Are you starting to get glimpses of God's kingdom? And can you see the difference? The difference between God's kingdom and Jesus Christ's kingdom? So yeah, I think for this video, I think I'll spend a little bit of time talking about Jesus Christ's kingdom. And if you can see that and separate it from all the other things you've been previously convinced to believe, then you'll more clearly see God's kingdom. That would be a good thing, wouldn't it? And in fact, that's one of the difficulties I had after being disfellowshipped, is seeing the difference and coming to terms with it. Coming to terms with the fact that Jesus Christ's kingdom would be completely ruined by Satan's weeds. So, yeah, I'm going to have to assume that that might be the thing that will help you, because you haven't asked any questions. So here we go. Okay, I decided to go all the way back to Daniel chapter 4 to start explaining something about Jesus Christ's kingdom. And it does seem like a weird place to start, but I think this is the right place. And by the way, this is nothing that the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society ever taught me or anyone else. And it's also nothing I ever learned from the more popular Christian denominations. This was all new to me, and so I expect it might be new for my audience. Remember, God is making all things new. So bear with me as we go back to Daniel chapter 4, and I'll start here in verse 30. Here we go. It's about Nebuchadnezzar. At the end of 12 lunar months, he happened to be walking upon the royal palace of Babylon. The king was answering and saying, "Is not this Babylon the Great, that I myself have built for the royal house with the strength of my might, and for the dignity of my majesty?" So, yeah, you know what happened immediately after he said that, because it was completely false. He did not understand something. He had to learn something new, and it took 7 years. And he was driven away from mankind and lived like a beast in the field. So, what took Nebuchadnezzar 7 years to understand? Well, what it was that he eventually came to understand, that it was Jehovah. It was God who set him up as king of Babylon the Great. Nebuchadnezzar had nothing to do with it. God set him up. And so when he finally understood this, that's when everything was restored to him. So that's a pretty hard lesson, don't you think? 7 whole years before he could understand this incredibly important lesson. So, as a Christian living during the time of the end, do we also understand the lesson that Nebuchadnezzar had to learn? That it's God that set him up as king. So keep that in mind, and I'll take you to another chapter in Daniel, and show you something pretty cool. Okay, so now I'm going to take you back a couple of chapters to Daniel chapter 2, and I'll read verse 44. And now I think if you're an ex-Jehovah's Witness, you know what the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society say about this verse, and see if what I'm going to explain is different or new. So remember, Daniel chapter 2 is about the immense image with gold, silver, copper, and iron, and feet of iron and mixed with clay, right? Okay, so you do understand that this immense image is about the establishment of the kingdom that will last till times indefinite, even forever. So this kingdom that lasts till times indefinite, even forever, the question you should be now thinking of, well, hold on, is that God's kingdom? Yeah, it is. But the more important question to ask is it Jesus Christ's kingdom? Good question, right? So I'll read Daniel chapter 2 verse 44, and keep in mind what I just explained. It's God who sets up these kingdoms. No one else has anything to do with it. It's God who sets them up, Jehovah. So here we go. I'll read verse 44. And in the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be brought to ruin. And the kingdom itself will not be passed on to any other people. It will crush and put an end to all these kingdoms, and it itself will stand 2 times indefinite. So yeah, it's talking about God's kingdom, and it's talking about it right at the time of the end. So did you learn the lesson? It's God who sets up the kingdoms. So it's God who will set up this final kingdom, God's kingdom. So now, here we are in the year 2019. So think about this question. What was the last kingdom that God himself set up? And who did he make king of that kingdom? You know the answer, right? Who was the last king that God set up? Here's a clue. It happened about 2,000 years ago. That's right. Jesus Christ was the last king that God set up. And it happened 2,000 years ago. And here we are now, living during the time of the end, with the full expectation that God's kingdom will arrive, the one that will last till times indefinite. And what is God's kingdom going to do? This is going to be something new. Hold on. It says, I'll read it again. It will crush and put an end to all these kingdoms. Okay, so this might rattle your bones a little. God's kingdom will put an end to all of the previous kingdoms. So what's the immediately previous kingdom? And who did he set up as king over that kingdom? Jesus Christ's kingdom. Christianity. So what is going to happen to Jesus Christ's kingdom? God's kingdom will crush it. That's nothing. Christianity don't teach that. The Watchtower Bible and Tract Society doesn't teach that. That's new, isn't it? But hold on, if you understood what happened to Nebuchadnezzar and Babylon the Great, and you also understand what he said here in Daniel 2 and verse 44, that's what has to happen. Jesus Christ's kingdom will be crushed by God's kingdom. It will be replaced. And it's God's kingdom, the one that will not have any weeds in it, that will continue on till time's indefinite. Remember, Jesus Christ did say his kingdom would be infested with weeds, and yet in Revelation chapter 21, it says that no weeds will enter into it. So they're not the same kingdom, because weeds did enter into Jesus Christ's kingdom, and he explained that to us in the New Testament, that would happen. So now you might be having difficulty bearing that. I'm sure if I was to go into a Christian church and say that, I'd be immediately excommunicated, because they think Jesus Christ's kingdom is God's kingdom. But it's been around for about 2,000 years now, and we can expect God's kingdom to arrive, the one that will last to times indefinite. So here's something else. In the book of Revelation, it talks about Babylon the Great. And so if there's an end time Babylon the Great, then you should fully expect that that end time Babylon the Great has a king that God set up over it. Who was the king? Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is the king of the end time Babylon the Great. And if he's not the king of the end time Babylon the Great, then why go to all the trouble of explaining to us what happened to Nebuchadnezzar when he said it was him, that it was his majesty that caused Babylon the Great to occur? No. It's God who set him up as king. And so God set Jesus Christ also up as king. And Babylon the Great is Jesus Christ's true kingdom. And so the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society would like to have you believe that Babylon the Great is the kingdom of false religion. No, it's not true. They taught you another lie. Babylon the Great is Jesus Christ's true kingdom. It's not false religion. It is what would happen to Jesus Christ's true kingdom. It would be ruined, and it will be crushed by God's kingdom. So That's new, isn't it? It's something I'm trying to help you understand. And I'm absolutely convinced my audience will have a difficult time bearing that everything you were previously convinced to believe, it's not true. So is everything you were previously convinced to believe something you're willing to abandon now? I recommend you spend some time thinking about that. Otherwise, you won't see the new things. So now I'm going to go back to John chapter 16, where Jesus Christ is addressing an audience, a future audience of excommunicated Christians who could expect a certain hour to arrive. Okay, so we're now going to John chapter 16. I've talked a lot about John chapter 16, so here we go. Okay, so was it difficult for you to understand that Jesus Christ's kingdom will be crushed by God's kingdom? Okay, so I'll read something from John chapter 16 and determine if that is now happening to you. Think about this. Is this now happening to you? Is it real evidence that you can see and feel right now as you're watching this video? John chapter 16 and verse 12. It's Jesus Christ speaking here, by the way. I have many things yet to say to you, but you are not able to bear them at present. However, when that one arrives, the Spirit of the truth, He will guide you into all the truth. For He will not speak of His own impulse. Well, what things He hears, He will speak, and He will declare to you the things coming. So, isn't that what I've just done? I've declared to you the things coming. And yeah, you might be having difficulty bearing up with that Jesus Christ's kingdom will be crushed. And yet here we are now the hour has arrived, and there might be more things difficult to bear as you go down this rabbit hole. Jesus Christ's kingdom will be ruined and crushed. All things will be new. So, okay, so you might have questions now. Don't be afraid to ask them. So, I think a good spot to end this video might be right here. And I recommend you spend some time thinking about that. Are you able to put up with it? Can you bear it? And is it new? You can go back and read through all those scriptures yourself in context, and maybe you'll find something else to ask me after reading those. That would be good. And I'll try to give you an answer. So, is all that new? Is your wineskin stretching? It should be. Are your bones being rattled? Or are your eyes opening wide? Spend some time contemplating all of those things. And I'll make another video. And I'll probably continue on the same thing, trying to show differences between Jesus Christ's kingdom and God's kingdom. And then if you can see the difference, then God's kingdom will become more apparent to you. Till next time.